Hello, good morning, everybody. It's 11 a.m. Welcome to this webinar about the PEMEA project. I'm Cristina Lumbreras. I'm the Technical Director of EENA. And we will start the webinar in 2 minutes. I see that there are still participants connecting, so we will give them 2 more minutes. I hope you are well. I can already explain to you how this webinar will go. So we have 5 presenters, including me. We will go through the slides. At the end, you will have time for questions, so don't worry. If you want to make a question, you have two possibilities. The first one is to make a question on the chat. And the second one is to raise your hand, and then I will unmute your microphone and you will be able to speak. And for your information, this webinar will be recorded, so that people who cannot attend today right now can have the possibility to look at the webinar and understand what we did at the PEMEA project. And also, of course, you will have the opportunity to look again and see again some slides. So there's still people connecting. So we will wait 1 minute more, and we will start. Okay, hello again, everybody. I think we can now start. I don't see, well, perhaps people will still connect, but I see already a good number of people connected. So welcome. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. We will explain what we did at the PEMEA project. We will have 5 speakers. First, me, I'm Cristina Lumbreras, Technical Director of EENA. Then I will introduce the project. Then we will have James Winterbottom from Everywhere, who is based in Australia. Hello, James. We will make a short description and the benefits about PEMEA. Then we will have Javier Cabas, also from Everywhere, who will present the architecture and the process for the testing. We will have then 3 successful cases, one from Slovenia, who will be presented by Urban Settler. Hello, Urban. And then we will have again Javier, who will explain what was done in 112 Extremadura in Spain. And Luca Bergonzi from Beta IT will explain what
Hello everyone.
What was done in Italy. And we will go then to the next steps and the conclusions. And finally, as said, you will have time for questions. And feel free to raise your hand or write an answer in a question in the chat. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. please. Here the PEMEA project was launched 2 years ago in April 2018 at the EENA conference. So we did EENA did this project together with 2 partners, Beta IT and Everywhere, and we had the support of Developers Alliance. So it has been a 2 years project. We had 2 phases. Phase 1 that ended in April 2019, and phase 2 that ended in this year. The idea was to present all the results at the EENA conference, but as the situation is as it is, we couldn't. So this is why we wanted to share with you during this webinar all the results of this project. It would have been much better to see you at the conference, but well, we will do as best as possible. And of course, if you have afterwards questions, first in the webinar or later, you can always contact us via email. So here you see all the participants we had during the project, phase 1 and phase 2. We had from Finland the 112 Suomi app, from Italy the 112 Where Are You app, from the 112 Slovenia SnapRing app, and from Spain we had 4 apps. One from the 112 Basque Country, so Steillac app, the one from the Murcia, the region of Murcia. We had also the application from 112 Extremadura, and 112 Catalonia has participated also with my 112 app. From France, we had e-Urgence, and we had also from Monaco the participation of their app, and we have also from the UK we had My Next Base Connect from Real Rider, and we had also Omnitor from Sweden in the project. So we had all these countries participating in the project, testing the interconnection of their apps. In Spain, we have many apps as each region. Well, not like each region, but where there are several apps from the different regions, and also here it's very important to test the interconnection of these apps. So if we can go to the next slides, we have published 2 reports. One it was published more than 1 year ago for phase 1, and we published some days ago the full report, including phase 2. I have put the links on these slides. They are at EENA webpage, so if you are interested, you can read them, and feel free to send any question via email if you have. So that's it from me, and I think now Javier will take, James will take the floor.
Right. So I'm James Winterbottom. I am the Chief Architect for Everywhere's Gale product, which is our implementation of PEMEA. Prior to joining Everywhere, I've kind of worked all the way through this industry for a long time, including doing some work for EENA a few years ago. So I'm going to give you a quick, short description of what PEMEA is and what its benefits bring, and then we'll see from Javier and the others how some of those things were demonstrated as part of the overall EENA project. So PEMEA started off really to address quite a specific problem, which was there was no good location with cell phones throughout Europe. We had a number of independent organizations that started building them. We had PSAPs that had people build them for them, And that was all very good and well, but they didn't roam outside the region or the area in which they were intended to work. So if any of you were at an EENA conference about 4 years ago, somebody actually brought out their phone and the entire screen was filled with various forms of 112 icon, and you couldn't tell which one was which. So really the problem that we were trying to solve was, how do we make all of these emergency apps roam? And there were a number of other problems that came into play, and that some of them had some pretty cool features that other people wanted to be able to use. So there were some that were hiking-based apps, for example, that were able to, via a web link, provide a series of checkpoints for where the hiker might have gone. And the PSAPs wanted to be able to access that. So what we put into PEMEA when we did it was we had a basic set of functions, and then we added this ability to be able to put more advanced or customized functions into it that could be used if PSAPs were able to do that. So we did that initially in EENA, and we had a very nice 2 or 3 specs, I think, that defined that. And then we took that into Etsy and turned it into one big spec, which became TS103478, which has now been released and has been out for, what, 2 years, and I think is at least on its 2nd revision currently. So what do we offer? So as I said, initially what we were aiming at doing was providing location information, both updated and initial, and some information about the user, and maybe some information about their next of kin, so who to call if they were in a situation where they couldn't respond. So as you'll see through some of the other projects that came along, when we did PEMEA, we kind of looked at some more advanced features that we could add into that would easily be enabled to the PSAP using various types of web technologies. So we have seen, and you will see, some demonstrations about improved accessibility for people with disabilities. So using PEMEA, you can have video and chat capabilities invoked, for example. Tourists and migrants coming from where the language isn't their native, where the local language isn't their native language. So we were able to add things into chat that did things like automated language translations, and those sorts of services are now becoming quite commonplace. We can also do things that will raise situation awareness. So some of the things might be allowed to send a video file, for example, or photos of what's going on, and vice versa, you might be able to send things down to the phone or to the user of the phone that can provide them valuable information. And using all of that, we're able to tie first responders and call takers and callers into the mix, and we can use a range of different device platforms in order to be able to support those capabilities. So basically what PEMEA offers you is a framework that enables services between users using apps and PSAPs and anybody downstream from there. Okay, next. Right, so what we found is that firstly, we're not restricted only to mobile devices. We have seen that we've got web-based clients on laptops, which we demonstrated a couple of times, and non-number-based apps is something else that can be supported, and you can support these things on regular mobile phones. Part of this early on, well, not early on, but in the last 2 years, we've kind of had a fairly strong focus on GDPR, because we realized that that was something that could impact us quite a lot. So we spent a lot of time looking at GDPR and how it applies to this particular communications mechanism or framework, and we wrote what we think is a pretty good GDPR conformance document for this specification. And I think we got the woman at the EENA conference a couple of years ago when we were in Dubrovnik to have cast an eye over that, and I think she said it was along the right lines. So I think we're quite comfortable with where that sits at the moment. I'm not sure if that's been published yet, but I think if it hasn't, it will be soon. And so basically what we can do is we can enable any application-based communications to support emergency services using this framework. And I think, Javier, that might be my last slide. It is.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. Now is my turn. My name is Javier Cabas. During the last 2 years, I have been the project manager in Everywhere for the deployment of the PEMEA network and the connection of the apps and PSAP systems of the participants in this project to the network. As we have mentioned several times, the objective of the project was to deploy and test the PEMEA network in several countries in Europe, showing the technical viability to connect apps to the European PSAPs, regardless the country of origin of the app and the roaming condition that the app user may be. We, Everywhere, are one of the two PEMEA network providers that have implemented the PEMEA network infrastructure in this project. The other PEMEA network provider is Beta 80, represented in this webinar by Luca. The idea in this time slot is to show the details of what we have implemented and tested during the project and understand how we, the PEMEA network providers, will be deploying in the production environment when the different countries step by step decide to launch their apps and PSAP connected to PEMEA in production. So I will try to explain it very simple. But if by any reason I didn't manage to explain it clearly for everybody, we will be happy to give you further details during the question and answer slot and at the end. Of course, in separate calls, if you consider it, that we could schedule apart. So let's see how we have set up the PEMEA network, how we have tested it, and how new apps and PSAP can connect to the network to leverage the network capabilities. If you review the PEMEA standard, the PEMEA network architecture has two main rules. First is that app must be connected to one AP node, which would be the application access point to PEMEA. In production, this AP would be typically deployed in the data center of the country of origin of the app. Also, it could also be in the cloud. In this project, the AP node has been deployed in the cloud. As you can see in this picture, PEMEA allows to have multiple apps and AP nodes in the same country connected to the PEMEA network. Another rule of PEMEA is that the PSAP must be connected to one PSP node, which would be the PSAP access point to the PEMEA network. In production, the PSP is typically deployed in a data center suggested by the PSAP, but it could also be deployed in the cloud. Then, once these access points are deployed by the PEMEA providers, they will connect them to the rest of the PEMEA network nodes. The IP are connected to PSP, the PSP are connected to another PSP and or ASP, and etc. The PEMEA network providers will be in charge of configuring the dynamic communication routes in the ASP and PSP nodes, providing location-based routing, which would depend on the location of the app. This way, when an app tries to establish communication with the emergency services in roaming, the communication will end up in the right PSAP. That is the nearest PSAP, basically. So maybe one of the best motivation for PSAP to connect to PEMEA is that with a unique connection to a PEMEA access point, to a PEMEA PSP, the PSAP can establish the communication with all the apps that are PEMEA conformants. No more integration efforts are needed for the PSAP. Then the number of apps to which the PSAP like to connect is a matter of configuration. But this is not a requirement. It is not requiring, additional deployment efforts by the PSAP to connect with apps. Okay. So to configure the validation environment for our project, we have connected and tested in total 11 apps from different European providers. We have connected and tested in total 8 PSAP systems. We have set up 2 ASP nodes, one provided by Beta 80 and another provided by Everywhere. And we have set up one PRA, the PEMEA register node, and that has been provided by Everywhere. As you can see, related to the PSAP, we have PSAP from 5 countries, as Christina said before: Italy, Spain, Finland, Slovenia, and Monaco. Having in Spain a set of regions, because we have a set of 112 PSAP, each one per region in Spain. Okay, and related to the app, we have tested apps from all these 5 countries and also from Sweden, France, and UK. So at the end, the network has been quite complex and complete, connecting a good amount of countries and apps. Regarding to the tested use cases, per each app and PSAP, we basically have validated the establishment of the communication between the apps and the nearest PSAP in roaming conditions in conformance with the PEMEA standard. In phase 1, we have validated the sending of the emergency data from the app to the nearest PSAP when the app is roaming out of its local region. We have checked the dynamic location-based routing of the PEMEA network, seeing that the info provided by the app is properly routed to the nearest PSAP in the different countries. And in the phase 2 of the project, on top of the previous roaming cases, we have tested different communication channels between the app and the PSAP to provide, for example, the tracking of the position of the app user, to establish chat sessions, and also multi-party video communications. So let's see, using a quite simple animation, how it works. When the app user is in the home country, in parallel to the establishment of the call, the major part of the apps are able to send a caller information like GPS location and another useful information about the caller to their local PSAP. We have tested in phase 1. What we have tested, in phase 1 is that the PEMEA network is able to route the caller information also in roaming conditions to the PSAP that is nearest to the location of the caller. So again, in parallel to the establishment of the audio call, which routing is solved by the network providers in all Europe, the caller info can travel to the proper PSAP despite or regardless the position of the caller. In this part of the project, we put emphasis on checking the interoperability between the Beta 80 and the Everywhere network nodes, because depending on the case, the AP, PSP, and ASP nodes could be provided by different network providers, as you may suppose. In phase 2, we have tested the PEMEA procedures for the app on the PSAP to exchange the multimedia capabilities. As you know, in PEMEA, in addition to the accurate location and the user information that we mentioned before, if the PEMEA initial message includes other important information like the shared capabilities, the shared multimedia capabilities that the app and the PSAP may have. So the initial message include which chat, video, file exchange communication capabilities the app may have. And the PSAP answer back to the app as part of the PEMEA call flow the capabilities that it also has, so that when the PSAP system receives the info, it can trigger the management, for sure, the management of the emergency, and also can invoke the establishment of one or more of these multimedia communication channels, okay, to establish data sessions aimed at communicating via video, chat, or simply to track the position of the user during the emergency time. Thanks to the PEMEA network, everything can also work in roaming. When the app is in roaming, the app will send the info to its AP as usual. The AP will send the info to the PSP, and depending on the user location, along the network to the proper PSAP. The PSAP will answer back with the shared multimedia capabilities, and then it could request the establishment of multimedia sessions. I hope it's something understandable. The matrix you can see, it's also in the PEMEA report and shows the huge amount of test cases that we have done. We will not review the matrix now. Also, of course, during the questions and answers slot, we could talk in depth about the details of any of these use cases. Now, as examples of implementation, Urban will explain the Slovenian case. I will speak later on again to tell you about the Spanish use case on behalf of the Spanish PSAP in Extremadura. And Luca will give you details about the experience in Italy. Okay, so Urban, please, are you there?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Urban Sedlar from University of Ljubljana. We've been active in this domain of 112 for quite a long time, and we're also in tight cooperation with national PSAP and also the PSAP system vendors. So let me just explain at the beginning a little bit about our motivation, so why we started with this. We are deeply convinced that apps have advantages like accurate location, rich communication, data sharing, and so on. And this all saves minutes for the citizens in need. And as a consequence, it also saves lives. And we also believe that video communication that's often mentioned is more than just a gimmick. This is not something like it's nice to have to show off, but it's a must for deaf people. It's their only way of communication. So we, as a Slovenian case, end-to-end, we are striving towards an app-based solution that supports all of that, which means audio, video, and chat, and any possible future extensions that might come in handy someday. In addition to that, we're also addressing a huge problem that we believe that's also been already mentioned, and that's the problem of awareness. Namely, the user needs to remember in a high-stress situation to use the app. And you already know that not even everybody doesn't even know the 112 or remember 112 number when they're in a high-stress situation. So the problem is going to be much more severe when we're talking about apps. So with our application here, we try to copy the approach that AML is using, which is basically to detect when 112 number is dialed, and when that happens, the app notices it and sends out a PEMEA message at the same time. So I understand a number of other apps do that as well. So can you go to next slide, please?
Yes.
So the work that we did, our application, just because of the last issue, tries to do much more than just 112. It's basically an active lifestyle application that we want to have on as many devices as possible. So it's for a wide-ranging population. And with that, we want to prevent also that the phone offloads it, which means it deletes it if it's not used often. So we want to encourage active use of the application, so it's there when the user needs it, when they dial 112. And for the PEMEA part, we have integrated with one of the providers already mentioned. We support basic message, EDS message, which is the emergency message. We support location updating. We support text chat and WebRTC video. And just to mention that our PSAP system vendor in Slovenia, IPCOM, has also implemented support for all of that, which means we are ready for end-to-end use cases and deployments. Now for the test results, we did test all of that as well, which means we tested the triggering of the call manually. We tested triggering the call whenever the number is dialed and the app is in background. We tested the exchange of basic PEMEA data, which means basic user profile and the phone number and so on. We tested the location updating feature, which means if the phone is moving, the location is constantly updating. We tested text chat communication, which is also something that can be used by deaf people or somebody that's not able to speak at the moment. And here we also tried with an additional translating feature powered by cloud translation services. And finally, we tested the video and audio communication using WebRTC. So on the final slide, just to briefly describe our midterm vision. So we want to actually push this app to a much wider audience, and for that reason, we are in discussion and want to actually implement it as a module in a number of highly popular apps here, national apps. And with this, we want to bring it to a much wider audience. And we also want in the next iteration to improve the user experience, which I think is going to be a big part of actually friendliness and being able to make it intuitive, so to speak, based on real world feedback. And we also want to work in the direction of future interoperability between PEMEA and NG112. So to make the entire end-to-end chain from the app to the PSAP basically support the IP-based communication. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Urban. I think your motivations and also your vision might be shared by many of the participants of this webinar. In our case in Extremadura, as Cristina said before, is a region in the west of Spain. We have maybe a different motivation. Okay. In Extremadura, the PSAP has connected to PEMEA and is suggesting the use of an app-based system called SVisual. SVisual covers one of the use cases that, in fact, maybe all Europe need to implement, is the access to emergency services by people with disabilities. Surely you know that the new European Electronic Communication Code says that the PSAP should provide the means to enable all European citizens, including those with disabilities, to access services in a, let's say, disability-friendly manner that is adapted to the disabilities of the citizen. In addition, the directive also says that it must be ensured the interoperability between all member states, and it must be based on published European standards and specifications. So for Extremadura, the use of apps and PEMEA has proved to be ideal to meet with these requirements in a fast and easy way to deploy. The total process for us took less than 2 months to be validated, to be honest. And the app and PSAP has leveraged 3 PEMEA capabilities. Location update, so that the user of the app can be tracked during the emergency time. The chat that communicate the citizen to the call taker using text and real-time translation also. And the video to establish multi-party video communication between the citizen with disabilities, the PSAP, and a third party, in this case, a sign language interpreter. It may be interesting for you to know the set of tasks that we need to implement to cover the scope in this project. It could give you an idea about the effort that you will need to do if you have a similar motivation. The app provider and the PSAP provider need to make some adaptations in the app and the PSAP systems to connect to the PEMEA network nodes. That is the the development of the AP and PSP APIs. I think it took for them something like 3-4 weeks to do it. Then they were deployed the PEMEA nodes in the cloud, connected to the rest of the PEMEA network and connected to our to the API, the app, sorry, and the PSP. It includes the PEMEA compatible chat server and connected to some real-time translation services and a PEMEA compatible WebRTC server to manage multi-party audio-video communication. In the PSAP side, they also made a few adaptations to manage emergency cases triggered by incoming PEMEA messages. So from now, in the PSAP, the incoming voice call are not the unique events that are triggering the emergency assistant. Also, the new incoming PEMEA message can trigger an emergency case. And finally, we collaborated with the Spanish Association of the Deaf, it's called ICENSE, so that their staff could provide the sign interpretation services during the test and connecting to a website when they were notified. This project has been a success for Extremadura's PSAP, which is today in a tender process to deploy the new version of the PSAP system and the app connected to PEMEA and also the sign interpreters, leveraging the PEMEA communication capabilities. We have edited a short video that we invite you to watch, explaining the motivations of our project and its scope. It is in Spanish, but it has subtitles in English, so it will be easy for you to watch it. And just before ending, just one additional thing to remark. As you may suppose, we tested the chat feature not only to attend people with disabilities. We also like to test how the new technology available in internet could help us to solve the emergencies with foreign people talking foreign languages and maybe reducing the associated cost. In our case, we tested the real-time translation of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft services, showing that any of them works quite well to help. We have seen that today the translations are reliable in a high percentage of the cases, and in those cases where the translation was not so good, in any case it helps a lot in combination with the original message. We feel that it's important to maintain the original message. Of course, it was the caller like to say, but adding the translation helps a lot for all the call takers to attend the emergency properly. So now I will pass the turn to Luca. Please do not hesitate to ask me or my colleagues any clarification later during the questions and answer slot. Luca, are you there? Luca, can you hear us?
Yes, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Oh, good, thank you. So let's say I will try to describe the same situation as before, like the other colleagues.
I think Luca's microphone's gone dead, or can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. So I'm here to represent, in fact, the Italian 112 emergency services, which hold the 112 Where Are You application, which is the national official emergency app. This has been active since 2014, so you may understand from our perspective how important it was to begin working with everywhere together for the PEMEA network. And because we consider this as an important step to make sure that every app will be available to the population. One of the most important let's say things we discovered is that several apps together make a wider network than just one app. So it was important from the beginning to start this idea. Here in Italy, some other apps exist. They are not official apps. Let's say not connected officially with 112. That was our first idea to start from, and therefore we wanted to look into the PEMEA network to see if this kind of dream could be made real. We started with Where Are You because we have at the same time developed the platform for the national 112 platform and the app. So this is a very specific case. No, we started with the optimistic condition, if you want. We have all around throughout the project integrated with other countries, with other providers, thinking about Finland and so on. But most importantly, let's say we were looking to, like I said, increase the range and the capability of the app, also considering that the app comes already with other languages. The app Where Are You is already translated in French, German, and Slovenian to cover the neighboring countries. So that was the initial idea, no? Extending as much as possible the capabilities of our app and the apps in general, and the other apps in general. So in time, Where Are You also grew with functionalities. In September 19, we developed the embedded chat functionality, thinking of keeping in mind the deaf community, but not only, because in general this is available to everyone to perform chat calls to 112. So this is a natural, we say, a natural process to also include these functionalities into the PEMEA network, which is capable of providing such features when apps are connected to it. Like I said before, we tested already with other countries the interoperability with Where Are You. So in principle, the app and the 112 national platform are compatible with the platform. What we see in the future, let's see, next slide, please. We have a midterm vision, or if you want, a vision for the future, which is implementing all the potential steps to make sure that PEMEA carries on data information which can be connected to the upcoming next generation 112 services. We all know that NG112 will be based on the transmission of voice over IP, in principle, voice over IP and other type of media communication, so all over IP. Nothing better than a network like PEMEA to be connected to this NG112 principle to become the sort of, let's say, reference OTT services. OTT stands for over the top, which can include every kind of provider which is not a native provider. So think about this difference between, for example, just to mention British Telecom as a telecommunication provider and Skype as an OTT. They both provide similar services, but in a different way. So PEMEA absolutely stands as a potential network, or if you want, mechanism to provide extra services to those platforms like the NG112 to fill completely the possibilities, adding extra value and extending the range of services. We don't want to forget about the cross-border and international principles connected with PEMEA, because that's where let's say the concept started. So the idea would be to have the app anyway dedicated to travelers, tourists, and all kinds of communities, which, of course, with disabilities, which can be in need of help also outside the Italian borders.
Thank you very much, Luca. Just a couple of additional slides to talk about the next step in PEMEA. PEMEA will grow in probably in two lines. For sure, in the number of apps and PSAP connected to the network. This year and the following years, we expect the fast adoption in the line that Luca has commented. The use of PEMEA to make the emergency apps cross-border apps for travelers, tourists, and communities with disabilities, and also having PEMEA coexisting with NG112, probably implementing NG112 as a base voice over IP service and using PEMEA as over-the-top services with extra value to enrich the base service. PEMEA will also grow in functionality. We will probably see a number of new ETSI technical specification in the ETSI Intel framework. We invite you to see the work that is being done in Intel. So, expecting this growing, how are we organized? How are we organizing the growing of the network? PEMEA will grow on demand. If you are an app provider or a PSAP who wish to connect to PEMEA, you just need to contact one of the PEMEA network providers, Beta 80 or Everywhere, and this PEMEA network provider will help you to deploy the PEMEA network access points and get connected to the rest of the PEMEA network in your country or region. You can find the emails of Everywhere and Beta 80 in this slide. And once your PEMEA network access nodes are deployed, the PEMEA network provider will be in charge of connecting you to the rest of the network, uploading your app and PSAP system in the PRA element, and then configuring the dynamic routing in the network to assure that the traffic is properly routed depending on the app user location. We have to remark two logical but important things. One important thing is that the network will not grow in a region if at least a PSAP in charge of managing the emergencies in that region do not demand it to a PEMEA provider. So again, PEMEA network will grow on demand, requested by PSAPs. Another important thing to remark is that not all the new apps are guaranteed to be connected to the network. The sensitivity of the objective of PEMEA network that is focused on the management of communication in emergency situations, and the sensitivity of the data being transmitted, which is personal data of citizens, makes that only the apps that meet with certain quality and reliability criteria should be allowed to connect. The quality of the app will be validated. The intention is to be validated in 2 steps. First step is that the app shall be recommended by at least one PSAP. This means that at least one PSAP would have a clear intention to connect the app to the emergency services in the region. This, let's call it a sponsorship, probably means that the app has been tested by the PSAP and is proved to be good to attend emergencies, aligned with the European regulations. The second step to validate the app is to pass what we call the PEMEA validation process, and that is coordinated by one of the PEMEA network providers. The PEMEA provider will test the connection of the app to the network in conformance with the ETSI standard and will check the interoperability with the rest of the network. So the test will be done after a formal validation process coordinated by the PEMEA network providers. We would like to tell you that we are also organizing the creation of what we call the PEMEA consortium, aimed at acting as a centralized contact point for app providers and PSAP system providers, and also maybe for new network node providers. Through this PEMEA consortium, these entities can get informed about PEMEA and how to get connected to the network. So the PEMEA consortium will be a group of public PSAP, public answering point, and PEMEA network providers who will collaborate to keep the PEMEA emergency network operative, maintaining the level of quality and reliability of the emergency services. We encourage from now PSAP to be members of the PEMEA consortium, because this would be the way for PSAP to lead and control the growth of the PEMEA network, being able to suggest good apps, systems, and also technologies to be added to the network in the future. The intention is that the PEMEA consortium offer through a web page that we call PEMEA.help all the necessary information to know the benefits of the PEMEA network and how to be a member and request the connection to the network. So we recommend that you access to the PEMEA page, PEMEA.help page. Related to this page, the work will be always in progress, and step by step we will improve the quality of the information that we serve through it. And I think we have covered more or less all. Now I will pass the word to Cristina Lumbergas again, and then we will give you time to ask questions, and we will provide clarifications.
Thank you, Javier. So for the conclusions, so I think it has been a very detailed presentation about what we have done. So I hope you have all understood that PEMEA facilitates the interoperability of apps cross borders. It can be regional or national. It also enables the multimedia communication given by apps and the PSAPs to be available when roaming. So we have tested the chat and the video. We have done a lot of efforts to make sure that PEMEA is conformant with GDPR. And as Javier explained, PEMEA is now ready to connect apps and PSAPs in Europe, and also why not in other places in the world. So I think we can open the floor for questions. If you can go to the next slide, Javier, that's only a question mark. So I see that there are already 2 questions in the chat. So we have from Steph Justen. The first one is which ones of these are live and which ones are in process of being realized? I think he was answering this for this question. We can so from the participants in the project, these are the tests that have been done. So yes, please.
Yes, I of course don't know the intentions of all of them, but I can tell you which of them are in process to launch the app and PSAP systems in production. For sure, you suppose that the speed of each country is different. Many of them need public tenders to make changes in their systems. So the speed in some regions are quite different than in others. So as far as I know, we have in Spain the Basque Country app and PSAP, the Extremadura app and PSAP, Telefónica and Murcia. So the Spanish region in general are in the process now to make the tender or already have the tender in place to launch it. And probably they will be live if not this year, during the next year. Also, Finland has communicated us and is studying when and how to launch the connection to PEMEA. And if I understood properly, also in Italy, Luca, the PSAP is expecting, or is or at least has the intention to launch this when the rest are to or decide to launch.
Yes. So Javier, the situation is that in Italy, the PEMEA node is already active, and Where Are You is basically already PEMEA compliant. But the most important thing is that by the end of June, due to some also pressures on the other side, we are launching the official connection with the Principate of Monaco, with our partners Sistel. So these two countries will be connected in production by the end of June through the PEMEA nodes.
So we have at the end probably Italy, Finland, Monaco, Spain, and Urban. I don't know if you have details about Slovenia. Maybe not yet, right?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
can't give an exact timeline.
Yeah. And in addition to this, there are other projects ongoing. For example, in Romania. In Romania, after the tender, also they include in the tender the PEMEA connection, and the project is ongoing. So as far as I know, in Romania, they also like to connect to the PEMEA network this year. So there are a set of countries already in the process to launch in production.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this answer. There's another question also from Steph. Javier Cavas claims to have tested the translations of Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. Is there a report of these tests available?
Not formally. We have internal results. I think it's not a good idea today to make here a comparison between providers. What I suggest you is to, if you are interested on this, is to test everything, to test all of them, and compare. Because what I can tell you is that all of them meet with our expectations. In the beginning and after testing and as a user, we feel that the real-time translation were not accurate enough. But we got surprised during the project. We saw that month by month and step by step, these kind of tools are getting more accurate. And really, we feel, at least in our Extremadura experience, we feel that this is something that can help. We don't recommend you avoid the original message, not at all. The original message is at the end what the citizen is writing. But again, you could have a complementary message translated in the call taker language that could serve to manage the emergencies in some cases.
Yeah, so if you're, I'll just step in quickly. So if you're looking at the chat system that we've been using as part, that we've just recently taken into Etsy, that was developed as part of a different program, that solution sends the original message forward first, and then the translations have a reference to that message later. Now, the AP will have to receive that. Whether the AP elects to pass that down to the application or not will be implementation dependent. But as Javier said, that we recommend it does, because translations, whilst they're getting better and better all the time, sometimes you might get something that looks a bit funny, and it may be more useful to have that in the actual language that it was sent in. And it's really not difficult at the app end to have it allow the user to change the translation on any particular message at any point in time.
Okay, thank you. Let's jump to the next one from Rodney. Thank you all, a very information webinar, very interesting stuff, thank you. How widely used are these apps in Europe? Is the possibility of mandating download and installation of these apps on a nation-by-nation basis being explored? Do you see this as potentially making AML redundant in the future, or simply another tool in the toolbox of 112 services? So I don't know who can
Maybe all of us.
I can try saying something if you want.
Right.
So, alongside all the applications that are out there, let's say Where Are You is available on every market, Google and Apple as well. So in principle, you can download the app even now. Where are you? It's very simple. And of course, it's not connected to your PSAP unless you live in Italy. That's what PEMEA was made for. So in principle, the idea of having one single international app, it's really, really complicated. And in fact, there wouldn't be any authority on top to say this should be the global application. Think about what's going on right now with this pandemic situation, and every country doing its own COVID-19 monitoring application. So if you want to download the app, you can. The most important thing is to make sure that your country, or at least the association, the 112 association in your country, are aware of the existence of PEMEA, and they get the connection to a node. Once they get the connection to a node, this automatically means they are connected to every application. available on the store, which is PEMEA compliant.
So yeah. I'll add to that a little bit if you like. So AML started off in the UK, as you're probably all aware, and its primary focus was to use SMS to deliver location information to the local authorities. PEMEA's focus initially was on roaming applications, providing location and user information through to PSAPs, but with the ability to provide additional information and services over and above that. So the focus of these two things, whilst in terms of location, sure, but the rest of it not really, because we were aiming to solve a roaming problem to start with, not just a location problem. And so the focus of our system now is very much on applications in general, where it started much more focused on dedicated emergency apps. So we can offer those sorts of services with a range of different applications coming through, which might not necessarily have emergency as the only capability in them. They may have a bunch of other applications or services that they're offering, and emergency just happens to be one of those. So we're not attempting to displace AML at all. We see that we're more or less orthogonal to that. It's just another tool in the toolbox, if you like.
Okay, thank you. There's another one. Which privacy concerns exist when chats are communicated with translation providers such as Google, Amazon, and Microsoft?
This is, in my opinion, a very good question. And this is one of the considerations that should be taken into account when you decide to use this. Sure. So at the end, and you are right, you are relying on these kind of providers to treat the messages as personal messages. You are right. So PEMEA is not is aimed at allowing you to connect if you consider it. Is a framework to communicate apps, internet services, PSAPs, and third-party personnel in general. So the GDPR's rules should apply to all the components that you connect through PEMEA. And you are right. PEMEA network has, and we have worked a lot on all the consideration that the framework itself have to have related to GDPR. But all the entities involved in the process should have or should meet with the same considerations.
So let's just take I think specifically the question was about how do the translation services come into play, unless I misunderstood it. So just to be clear, what we translate currently is only the content of the message that is exchanged between the parties. So unless there is something in the actual content of that message, that sentence or whatever it happens to be that's being conveyed, that actively identifies who the user is, it's really just a bunch of text flying forward and around. So we don't say, hey, this is Mike and his name, and take all his private information and convert that up into the cloud and push it back down again in translated form. So that user information is done quite independently of that, and at the moment we don't offer any translation service on that at all. All we offer is a translation of the message exchanges within the chat room itself, which is quite different. And I mean, we could get to the point with that where we almost did it word by word if that made more sense to do it, but I'm not sure that it does. Certainly we could start to look at things that are a little bit cleverer and pull out people's names and things like that if that was necessary. But if the thing about GDPR is that information on its own isn't the problem. It's information where you can associate that with an individual that is the problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, James. We are running a little bit out of time, so let's go to the next one. Can you provide some documentation related to the validation process for the PSAP and for the app? I can confirm that Romania intends to join PEMEA after the implementation of the new 112 project. This is a question from Daniel Rata.
Yeah. Let's sorry, can you repeat the question again? Because looking for the proper slide, I
Okay, so it's about if there's documentation related to the validation process for the PSAPs and the app.
Right. Yeah, there is, and what we recommend to you is to get in contact with Everywhere Open IT to provide you with this documentation, and also step by step we will put in the PEMEA.help website the proper documentation so you can be aware of the total process and estimate also your efforts, the efforts that will be associated to it. So the best way to get informed is through us, through the PEMEA providers, and also through this EENA, of course, and through this PEMEA webpage, where we will put all the details to get connected.
Okay, thank you, Javier, for this clarification. And there's another question from Steph. Are these providers giving any form of guarantees with respect to privacy?
Yes, sure. Sure. At the end, we are serving the public organisms and the citizens, and we are forwarding, routing information that might be private. If you review the standard, they are from the technical, from the beginning, from the design, we have a lot of, let's say, consideration related to the privacy of the data. And when you decide to launch this kind of connection, we as providers should meet with the regulations of all the countries. The regulations are the same, are similar in all the countries. So we have done this effort prior and during this project. So the major part of the considerations are already there. And in any case, in each project, the project manager of each PSAP will review all the privacy concerns that the special deployment in each country may have.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 more questions. We are running really out of time, but let's go. We have a question from Gyula Bara. Do you consider to have a unique user interface for all the PEMEA apps? This way, it would be ensured that users would have to handle emergency communications in a single unique way, similar with the call to 112.
It might happen, but as Lucas said before, it's quite difficult that we have just one specific app. Of course, it could be done. It depends on the regulations and also the work that from the European Union you may do. But
so the key thing here, though, right, is that PEMEA enables applications, however those applications have been written, to service the people that they're aimed at servicing. So if you've got one which is focused purely on people with disabilities, they would want something that's quite different to enable person's ability to be able to see, for example. So those are quite different needs, and you would have different application presentation for different application needs depending upon who its intended audience is, as well as what features they might actually want in that service. So in answer to Guya's question, PEMEA doesn't touch on what the applications look like. We leave that completely and utterly up to the application developer. What we do is to define how the message flows work through the system to ensure that the application data that's associated with those gets to the correct PSAP, and the correct PSAP can then invoke any of those additional service capabilities that it supports in common with the AP. It doesn't have anything to do with the development of an app itself.
Mhm.
Okay, we had here a point made by Andrew Richardson. As a provider of an emergency alerting service, we adhere to GDPR. Thank you for this point. We have another question from Daniel Rata. Is there a plan for the exchange of PEMEA messages to be considered free of charge as stated in the EECC?
You know that the PEMEA network has to be supported. It has to meet with the quality that is expected to the emergency situations. So in this moment in time, the funds to deploy and provide the PEMEA network nodes comes directly from some European projects and also from the PEMEA providers. So
can we just clarify the question? Because I think
what is mentioned here, the ECC makes that the call to the 112 is free of charge for the citizen.
For the user, right? So really, what they're talking about is the connectivity, Javier, from the application to the
connectivity from the app. Ah, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue, please, Jens.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And what that actually means in a data service world, I think, is a little unclear. So at the moment, that would be up to the app provider and whatever media mechanism that they're using. So PEMEA itself is fairly agnostic to that because, again, it starts on the edge. So that's something that would potentially require further investigation. I think, to be honest, as data roaming and data access becomes cheaper and cheaper, I think that this is going to end up being pretty much a non-issue. But I take your point. At the moment, if you're contacting 112, it's supposed to be charge free.
Okay, so here also it's when you send the data, you cannot see if, so it's very difficult to know if these data are for 112 or for another topic. And the net neutrality doesn't allow to see and make these parts of the data free of charge. But as James said, there are some investigations to know if we can somehow put that this part of the data are considered free of charge. And then Gyula Bara, I did not ask about deploying one app, but aim to unify the user interface of PEMEA apps.
And I answered that. It was actually that component that I was answering. So each app, as it's created today, is created to service a particular user base, and that user base, it may not be appropriate to have the same user interface presented to every user type, because people might be hard of seeing, in which case they want particularly big things, versus people that can see perfectly well but need to be able to type quickly. Really, I think that we can't move towards a common layout for those things. What we can do is to suggest that, and PEMEA seriously won't do this. Maybe Guya, you can provide some guidelines, but I think it's be very difficult to enforce that on potentially what things you ought to make available in your application interface. But honestly, I think you're much better leaving that to the people that are creating the apps than you are to try and enforce that in any form.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, so yeah, we are running late. It has been a very interesting and detailed webinar. So here you have all our email addresses for the presenters. Don't hesitate to contact any of us if you have comments or questions or things to share with us. So thank you very much. As said, we will share with you all the presentation and the recording, and speak to you soon. I hope you are all well and you stay well, and keep in touch. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.